What's up, everybody? Welcome to Bootsy Greencast. This is number 3, and I have a very special surprise for you. I have Jonathan Ray on the show. He goes on Instagram as Apocalypse Fatigue, as above, so below. Oh, man, he's got acronyms, baby. We have a great conversation. I really enjoyed having Jonathan on, man. He was great, so I hope you guys enjoy this hard-hitting episode. All the links are in the show notes. Enjoy. Is there anything that you're like uncomfortable at all to talk about? How should I address you? Asada. Tobless Stone.
I mean, if you dig around on the website, my real name is on there, so whatever. I need to stop hiding. It's so my birth name is Jonathan Ray. I go by I got in the habit of using pseudonyms online because I didn't feel like anybody reading my resume should go find out what my views are about the universe, because I don't really feel like that helps me do a 9 to 5. So I decided to just make a joke because I can't help myself, and I decided to go with if you read it out loud, it would be as above, so below. Because I'm a spooky witch, but anyway.
right. No, that's great.
Because I'm very clever. That's the point. Everybody needs the takeaway here. Very clever guy.
Very clever guy. No, totally.
Validate me.
I'm stoked to be talking to you. You've done a lot of really cool and interesting work, so I'm excited to get into it. Apocalypse fatigue, we talked a little bit about last time. Just getting exhausted about hearing about the apocalypse all the time, basically. Is that the gist?
Well, yeah, I grew up in the South where there's a lot of like evangelicals, I guess. I mean, we were Methodists, which I still don't know what that means. I think what it means is that you pay a lot of money for pipe organs and don't ask questions. But what
part of the South are you from?
I'm from North Carolina. I'm from just outside of Fort Bragg in the middle of North Carolina. I'm originally from a place called Hope Mills, but I was born at Cape Fear Hospital. So Have fun with that.
That's awesome. That's trippy, man.
Yeah, I think it's
I'm a Georgia
fun.
boy. I'm from Georgia. I live here now. Still.
Yeah, you sound like Georgia to me.
Thank you. I guess. I don't know.
It's not an insult. What I get a lot is people say, "Oh, you don't sound like that." Like, okay, thanks. Yeah.
I get that too from time to time. I appreciate that, honestly. I appreciate both. I don't know. Do I get to do that? Do I get to appreciate both? I don't know.
Sure.
I'm going to say sure, yeah.
My accent comes and goes depending on who I'm talking to. If I've been hanging out with my dad, then my accent comes back. If I'm especially tired, that kind of thing. So what happened is when I was a kid, I figured out how to like run a program in the background to repress my accent so people wouldn't assume that I was dumb, which is really not fair because there's a lot of really intelligent people in the South. You just wouldn't know it because the loud ones are like yelling at funerals and stuff. So I don't know. Not everybody from the South wanted freedom fries to be a meme,
Yeah, just most of us. It's okay. It's okay.
I didn't know you were a freedom fries guy. Wow.
No.
I gotta go.
I said most of us, not. I wasn't including myself. I wasn't. But I'm sorry I got off track from the apocalypse fatigue thing and went into the Southern thing. I usually don't.
Well, no, I also wandered off topic as well because I have the attention span of a dead fly. So don't worry about that. You're doing fine. I'm going to validate you now. You can validate me later. We'll just kind of scratch each other's backs throughout this in the interview. No, so I was from the South and I kind of came of age in the 90s. I'm a Gen Xer, so a lot of rapture talk and I feel like I talk about this every episode, but it was pretty formative. So already the 90s, everybody's like, "Oh, what's going to happen in 2000?" And my dad was a computer programmer, so he got called in to fix all the Y2K stuff because he knew like the original computer language and all this stuff. And so that was kind of in my mind. And then also they were really pushing the Book of Revelations as literal truth, which is not a good thing for a developing mind. And it it's a lot. If you're like 10, it's a lot.
It is a lot of pressure. I grew up that way too, so I can 100% relate. I mean, we didn't really get heavy into the Pentecostal church until my teens, but I grew up, my grandmother was super duper, pinch you in church, Southern Baptist, lady.
Oh yes.
Make you eat a bunch of sugar, and even if you didn't like it, but but yeah,
also our grandmas knew each other, it sounds like.
They called her Aunt Mint. That's how she was just shoving candy down people's face. Yeah.
That's wow.
but yeah, so I totally can relate. It's a lot of pressure, to like avoid the apocalypse and fight the enemy and all that stuff,
I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't want to bash Christianity. I think at its core, if you like, dive down to the center of Christianity, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I can't find anything wrong with loving your neighbor and, using your life for service. I can't find a thing wrong with that. I think that's the point of every religion ultimately, is to become useful and to, concentrate on love. But unfortunately, over the centuries, and splintering into 2,000 factions, you don't get that until you go pretty deep into it. And when you're a kid, what you get is a lot of really confusing metaphors disguised as literal truth. And it's just a lot. And when it's 10 years till the end of the world on paper, and you're hearing all this stuff, and then you go to Sunday school and they're showing you movies from the 70s that portray the revelations as literal truth. And like, you might enjoy these if you haven't seen them. I kind of recommend them to every guest I have, because I just have a problem. I mean, I guess I'm just processing this finally. But yeah, there's a series of movies called Thief in the Night, and it's basically, what if the rapture really happened as it is on the page? No metaphorical interpretation, just straight up. They do take some liberties because the UN is the Antichrist.
I think that's actually pretty accurate.
I mean, what's hilarious is I had just gotten all that stuff into my brain, and then I started running into people who were introducing conspiracy ideas to me, and I did some reading around that time. I'm like, oh, these guys also think that the UN is the Antichrist. So I don't know how to feel about this. I viewed it as entertainment for a long time.
Fair enough.
I still feel like huge charitable organizations are suspect because there's so much administration. And I don't know anybody at the UN. I don't know. I want to assume the best, but I've heard some things. I don't know that the UN is going to actually force us to get forehead tattoos as they do in the movie. But
wow, that's cool. I can't wait to check it out. I'm just typing that into my notes.
It's worth looking up. It's produced by the guy who did The Blob, and the production values are quite similar.
Oh, cool. That sounds really fun, actually. Like, I can't wait to see this movie.
No, they're around. I mean, I think some of them they're on Amazon Prime or something.
I'll find it.
They're around.
I have my
exist.
ways.
There's like 7 of them. They get great. Pretty wild at the end there.
No, that's interesting. No, I mean, I was really just inserting a joke, but I mean, at the same time, I think smaller and smaller factions of power are probably pretty dangerous. I think we could have learned that from history, yes. Overall. But but yeah, I didn't mean to get off again on a tangent, but I will do it.
It's all right. Tangents are how my brain works. As long as we can reel each other back in, it's all good, I think.
Awesome. I love it.
I'm really glad that you're recording on your end, because on my end, it sounds like I'm trying to blast audio through a toaster that I found in the garbage.
Well, you sound really good over here.
Well, I'm gonna take your word for that, and I'm just gonna ignore the static on my end.
Yeah, it's cool. It seems like there's not too much lag either.
Cool.
So yeah, I'm really happy with the quality of the audio. That's great. So we were talking about Christianity is a good thing overall, or at its heart it is. And I agree. I think all, religions are really an attempt to really connect with yourself. And, that's basically the idea. But then they get blown out of proportion. And when you're young and you're coming up and, you've got all this pressure and all these ideas and this literal, the end of the world is happening, it's a lot. So you grew up with that sort of pressure. I remember putting distilled water and stuff in the basement, for Y2K. But
nice, you were hardcore. You went harder than me.
Well, I mean, my parents were like, well, let's put some gallons of water under, just in case, milk sandwiches, get some extra bread and milk from the grocery, but yeah, that's it's a lot.
Yeah, I think there are some really beautiful concepts in Christianity. I also think that you should I mean, if you got to be 18 to smoke, it might be a little bit much for like a 9-year-old to learn about demons and hell and possession and the end of the world and endless. There's just a lot for, when someone is very young, they don't know the difference between, they just don't, their imagination is going to take that as a real thing.
Absolutely.
And I just think we really need to be more careful as a culture with what we put in front of those young minds. I mean, when you're a little older and you got a handle on life and you can be introduced to these concepts, I think that's fine. But I think when your cortex is still growing, like maybe don't put that stuff in there because it has such an effect. I'm still kind of getting over it myself. It took a lot of deprogramming, and again, like I say, no disrespect to faithful Christians, especially people who accent on the works. I think that's beautiful. But if you're just in it for the superiority complex and the guilt trips, keep that to yourself, man.
Yeah, there's something addictive about that. I mean, we could go off on so many other social, imprints, if you will. But this particular one, it bleeds over too. It bleeds over not just from Christianity and this idea of the apocalypse, but also into, like the conspiracy mind too, where, like the prepper, I think that, and there's something like almost addictive almost about it. Like you can get seduced by this weird, strange thing. It's like why people like zombie movies, right? Like, right. I'm going to watch that apocalypse movie that you recommended me, A Thief in the Night, and I'm going to love every second of it.
You are. It's good camp.
Yeah. But I mean, it's like, I can understand how powerful, like, I guess you'd call it the pendulum or the idea of this thing, and it perpetuates itself the more people latch onto it. So like the more people in our society think this is a real thing, how many apocalypses have there even been, or how many times have people thought that they were living through the end of the world? I can't imagine being Russian in the 80s,
Oh my goodness. I mean, I imagine it was a bit like being American in the 80s.
Yeah.
We did the nuke drills, which were actually just the exact same as their tornado drills, except they kind of just they didn't bother putting you out in the hall. I always enjoyed the tornado drills. They're like, no, if you just go into the hall and cover your neck, you'll be fine, because everybody knows that 1 inch of bone will protect your skeleton from 200-mile-per-hour winds that can destroy buildings.
Yeah, buildings that are made of concrete blocks. You got a few of those
flying
in the
around. Same way, a desk made of sawdust and resin will absolutely protect you from a nuclear blast that can destroy infrastructure of entire cities in 2 seconds.
A seatbelt will save you from a plane crash.
Yes. It is so good that we got all these problems solved forever, and that there are no threats to human life in modern society.
Yeah. Yeah. We have to keep ourselves safe. That's important. It's funny. I lived in Central America and South America a little bit, and you don't see like signs that say like "Do not stand here," like on the ledge of a precipice, like a giant cliff.
That problem takes care of itself if you let it. I mean,
yeah, it was fun. Oh man. You also making music. I love your band name, Skin Cage.
Oh, thanks. I've grown into it. I was embarrassed about it for a while, but then I thought, well, it's what people know, and it still kind of holds up. I don't hate having a body like I used to, but I do feel like sometimes it's very uncomfortable if you're in a situation where you're kind of like very aware of your physicality and you're not as in touch with your deeper self. It can be pretty uncomfortable, and there's a lot of stuff tied to being a physical being that gets a little old from time to time. It generates a lot of needs that sometimes it'd be nice to not have. But on the other hand, it's being physical is the opportunity for experience. So you can't totally hate on it.
Yeah, no, I mean, we probably signed up for this. I'm assuming. I don't know. I'm not really sure. I wouldn't say anything for certain, but it's interesting, you know, like I've thought a lot about that too, like how to bust through this meat suit, you know, like, it's an interesting thing. I felt an astral projection come on one time and I fought it. I was like, this is horrifying. So
Well,
the
yeah,
one
because
time
how
I
do you
could
know if you can get back?
yeah, it scared the shit out of me, dude. No lie. And it was like I was about to be shot out of a cannon, and I was like, oh my god, no, 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 no. And so I just denied it. But but I like the rusty cage, you know, just busting out. It does seem like such a limiting thing, the flesh, you know. It's kind of funny. I've thought about that myself. A fair amount, which is why I love the name so much. Skin cage.
Well, and so far I've been able to hang on to it. There was, for a brief moment in the late 90s, there was a new metal band in South Africa that hit me up that they were like, let's share the website. I'm like, no, I got it first, dude. Sorry. I'm not. And then my domain expired and some Chinese skincare company bought it, so I'll never get it back.
Oh no.
That's all right. I mean, I've got what I need through Squarespace and Bandcamp and all the various tentacles.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you grew up in the South as a Christian, Pentecostal, eh?
I mean, my parents. Let's see. My parents met as Methodists. I think I was raised as a Methodist. My dad's more into Pentecostal these days. My mom's gone, so she never really switched. Grandma was Baptist. My grandma was one of those like go to church and then get out like Tuesday Baptists, and you eat 3 or 4 times, and there's a lot of hanging out. But so yeah, just your basic white boy Christian stuff.
And then, so now you've gotten into studying about some clinical psychology, I would assume, is involved, and being kind of face to face with, I guess, what you would you call it, mental illness? I don't know. Is that the right word?
I struggle with what to call it. I think if you're being clinical, it's okay to call it that. I think it's easy to add a lot of baggage to that term, but there's not really a better one. There's not really a better term, I don't think, right now. I think if you're treating somebody in a clinical facility, you probably just have to use your clinician brain and that vocabulary, and as long as you don't personalize it, it's fine. But if we're talking about it in a societal context, I don't know, we just got to be careful. We really don't want to. It's very important not to reduce people to their diagnosis, because that makes them a problem that can't be solved, and then you completely remove their humanity, and it's just really it's not helpful, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. It's dismissive, I believe. You know, it's like a lot of things. It's like, oh well, that's this and that's that, and it's just a great way to categorize something and then slough it off. You know what I mean? So, like, yeah, I think Dave Chappelle said that in saying that calling something crazy is dismissive on an interview. And I latched onto that, and I've noticed that that's not the only term that we use to dismiss things.
No.
So, you know, so that thing, and also, yeah, treating people still as human beings, even though they're maybe suffering with some stuff. I'm curious, too, about the origins and maybe some other theories and ideas of like what's happening, you know, with people, because we can study the brain a bit and understand that to an extent. But I mean, if truly there's like a multitude of realities or an infinite amount, could it not be true that somebody's just jumping back and forth between those realities? And I guess that would be kind of how it has to be in a way, or at least from a certain perspective. I don't know. It's confusing. I'm confusing myself.
I mean, it's the thing about being an American and really just only speaking one language primarily, and having it be this language, which is essentially designed to sell timeshare packages to people and not really for discussing subtlety. It's hard. It's hard to use English to talk about this stuff, because we cut out a lot of the words that would be useful. If you go to other cultures, I don't have examples on hand, but I mean, there other cultures have much more subtle ways to describe emotional and psychological and spiritual states. And we just kind of, we're very much like, how can we package? That's what English is about. How can we package this? How can we sell this? How can we spin this? But not so much like, how do we describe this in a way that doesn't make it black and white? I don't know. Maybe people who are, more poetic can do a better job with it, but I just always have a hard time. I have to do a lot of drafts to get myself expressed properly, because I feel like the first couple of times it's like, no, this is way too, you know, uh, medicine bodily, it does, for lack of a better way to put it. It just seems like it's so stale the first time you try to talk about it. Um, it's really hard to describe subjective experience anyway. So then when you have a language barrier, it's really hard to me. And I think that English, even though we're both speaking English, I think English has barriers built into it. I don't know if that's by design or if it's just the way it turned out, because it was like the colonial language, and it's very business centered and very like, you know, I don't know. Again,
That's interesting.
I can't come up with a word for right now because my main database is English.
No, no, that's an interesting point. I've never really thought about that. But we have such a long history and so many, like, who knows how many years, ancient history and all that going back so much. It could be by design, it could also be unintentional, as well. But, I think that's pretty interesting. Like in Greek, don't they have like 3 or 4 different words for love, different types of love, for instance, as one example.
Yeah. And that's one thing where I gotta give it up, because the ancient Christians did preserve some of those words. I think the one that comes to mind is agape, which is like the more unconditional type of love. Yeah. There's 5 or 6 of them, and we just have the one, and we shove everything into that, and everybody's confused for their entire life.
That's so true. Yeah. Well, I was just experiencing that today, this morning, and actually yesterday. It's like the past few days, man, I've just been kind of out of it. I think I get lost out here, like out here in Meat Suitville or whatever,
Sure.
The physical world, and distracted and caught up on shit. It happens to everybody. But then it's like, yesterday at some point I was driving to Atlanta and something just clicked, and I was like, wow, man, I need to remember what's important. And that is love, like viewing things and coming from a place of just love. I mean, you can't fuck up, you can't
Yeah.
screw up if you're coming from that place. I mean, there's always ways to improve and ways to use your mind, but immediately coming from like that place, it completely changes how every activity goes, how the day goes, perspective. It's like, and two, because we're using, I've talked a lot about spiritual stuff and, getting what you want and getting into a better reality and all of that. And all that stuff is great. But even if you have everything you want, if you feel empty inside, you're miserable. It's not going to be fun. I would rather feel like gratitude and love, like a deep, and there's probably some better word for this in some other language that's just beautiful. Until then, we'll try and use business terms
Right.
to get this out. But there's really there's not a better feeling, and there's a lot of truth in the Bible too, where it talks about like the peace that passes all understanding, other ways that, Jesus and other people in the Bible have described, some of these states. But, just coming from that place, it's just like, man, something clicked where I was just like, oh God, like I had my head up my ass, and it happens, from time to time. We get you get working on a bunch of stuff, you get busy, you get distracted, and then you forget to sort of like check in,
Yeah. I mean, this is an example for me. Like I write a lot of stuff that almost feels like I'm writing instructions to somebody, but I'm really, at the end of the day, I'm reminding myself what to do. I would hope that it reaches people, that it will be useful to. But like I put out an episode. I started putting after I reassembled my rig due to my microphone dying on the air the first time we tried to do this. I decided, okay, well, I need to test the mic anyway, so I'm going to set this up in a comfortable way and try doing some like audio versions of things that I've written that people seem to respond to. So I started putting out kind of monologue episodes in between the interviews, and I put one out, and it was kind of like a cautionary note to people who are into truth seeking, conspiracy, whatever, but just people who are digging that, this is going to burn you out. And these are some things that you need to do to make sure that doesn't happen, because if you're burned out, you're no good to anybody. And who cares if you know the truth if it's destroying you? So I have all these suggestions at the end, and I worked a weekend shift, and I realized, I'm not doing any of the things that I tell people they should do. That's probably why I feel like hot garbage right now. I'm just like delirious, dehydrated. I'm basically disassociating because I'm so tired. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to sit down for 15 minutes and relax. And I'm going to drink a lot of water, and I'm going to try to eat something that has nutrition and go to the gym and do all the things I tell people to do. Because if I don't, then what's the point of me telling people? I'm constantly testing my own method to make sure that it's not just more noise, really. I started writing a book that was of the same vein, like a lot of I thought about it and I was like, listen, I just got laid off. I'm broke. I can't afford going to a counselor. What can you do on a budget of $0 to start working on your own mental health recovery? So I wrote a lot, and I'm trying to field test everything now. And then once I feel like it's not, anybody can write a book. You just put words in front of each other. That doesn't mean it's good or useful information. So I just want to make sure that before this sees a light of day, it needs to be authentic, or otherwise it's garbage. And I just got to let it go and say, okay, well, I wrote X pages that don't need to be out there.
Yeah, that's pretty brave. I like that. I like not having any affiliations. I'll say that. And I think that's good that you're testing your material. That's really, 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 really important. It's also pretty cool to be like, well, you know what? If I write it and it doesn't need to go out, then it doesn't. Because I can't, to be honest with you, I can't tell you how many projects I've done that I'm just like, ugh, burn this thing,
Yeah. And you got to be willing to do that. It's a fine line between self-sabotage, where you just never put something out because you're not confident. But the other extremity of that is just thinking you're the best and everything you put out is like solid gold and everybody should pay attention to it.
Oh no, I put it out and then people know I'm not the best. I'm like, no, I'm just going to go ahead and put this out anyway and just eat it real hard, real quick.
Yeah, the internet will let you know if you got something wrong. They don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny.
But on the converse, I will say that I've made efforts to be a little bit more visible. Like I took 2 years off of doing my podcast, and I was barely writing because I was in school, and I was just kind of like grinding and trying to live 2 or 3 lives at once, and trying to avoid burnout and failing mostly. But I got back to it, and it's not that hard to find your audience. If you're just patient with it, people do start to arrive. I'm not making like crazy amounts of money or anything. I'm just doing this for its own purpose. But I should probably change the way I talk about it. Like it could eventually become something. The point is, I want it to serve a purpose, whether it ever becomes like a career or not. I want it to be of use and of service. And I'm kind of tired of just keeping all this stuff to myself. What's the point?
Yeah, no, that's really good. And I think that's like the idea of like outer intention and transurfing or synchronicity, as many others have called. It's like there is a way to serve the greater purpose or whatever, and with your skill set, whatever that is, you just have to click into that, and I think it's really important to ask, what does the world need? What do people need? Even like to think of it from I don't know, like you could even be almost capitalistic about it. What does the market need, right? And when I say capitalistic, I don't mean like, what's going on here. But I just mean like laissez-faire, like that idea that, people have needs and that you could provide something for them. And to understand the fact that you might have something that's a gift to you and to everyone else that you could provide. So it wouldn't necessarily have to be that, difficult all the time, right? So the theory being that, but like, I know exactly what you mean. When I started making videos, I didn't really want to do it, but I felt like people could benefit from it, right? Like this is something that I could provide because I've read this book a bunch of times or whatever, and then maybe people could. It might help them. It might help them out. So and as a result, it did. So I say keep hanging in there, keep doing that thing. I'm trying to do hopefully more creative stuff in the future. In fact, I mean, I say hopefully, but I am working on a lot of different like comedy and like film projects that are a little bit more like zany, but at the same time, my heart's still there because I want to try and convey some sort of message or provide certainly joy, first and foremost, but also, some alternatives, some different ideas to people, like those two things are kind of important to me. Like, hey, just to inspire some thought, right? Not to necessarily provoke it.
Yeah, I think that's so valuable. And I feel like, I think you're kind of coming from a similar place as I'm coming from too. I've gotten a lot of really good insights from people just sharing things freely. Like it's really nice to be here, to have been here for the moment when the internet kind of came online and all the stuff that you normally would have to dig through books in some other city or go to an estate sale or like just know somebody in an organization to get to. Like that stuff's available now. Like it's incredible how easy it is to find this stuff now. And, like, I appreciate what you did. Like my situation is I'm doing a lot. I have a history of doing a lot of like very kind of like repetitive physical jobs just to like make a steady income and while I figure out other things. And, I'm on my way to shifting into an actual career service. But in the meantime, there's a lot of long hospital shifts to fill, and thank goodness for earbuds, and so podcasts, audio books, all kinds of things like that are what get me through. And I was never going to sit down and read, fill in the blank book because I just don't have that kind of time and I don't really have that kind of an intention. When I was a kid, I would devour books in a day, but now I sit down and my eyes hurt and I just get distracted by something else or I fall asleep or something. So an audiobook is such a blessing, and you just like gave that to the world for free, which I really appreciate because that was like that's not a short book. That's a lot of time that you put in. You made it sound good. You made it really easy to find, and you just gave it freely. And I think that was really cool. And you're one of the few people I've actually been able to thank directly for something like that because this stuff is floating all around the internet. But so thanks for that.
Oh, you're welcome. It was something that I don't know, for whatever reason, I wanted to do it. And I'm glad I did, like it's been a little bit bizarre since then, but that's fine. Like, I don't know. I just, I put up a couple of chapters and then, cause I finally was like, I'm determined. I'm going to learn this. I'm just going to like focus on this. I'm going to do this for X amount of time. And I'm not going to, cause I would be the person who would read like 40 books and then you can't implement anything out of 40 books,
Right.
So, I wanted to I would try a different method, time and time again. I would read a book and then be like, all right, I'm going to focus on this one. And most of them had big giant holes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you couldn't just practice that one. You know what I mean? Like it didn't really explore everything. And I think there's still some pretty big holes in transurfing too. But to me, it was the most complete book that I could find. And when I read it, I was just like, oh my God, I just devoured it. And so, like putting out those couple first chapters and then people were like, hey, will you keep going? And so I was like, all right, cool. We had a studio at the time. So I would go there. I was working a lot. I was starting my own first business and I had 2 bar jobs. So I was like grinding it out. I was also in a band, and then I would record that podcast or that audiobook at night. Like I would get off work at like, midnight or 1 or so o'clock, and then just go out to the studio until like 4 a.m. and record like a chapter at a time. But yeah, that book's like 700 or so pages, so it was a pretty big investment of time for an audio book, And then the Kabbalion also I did, and then Emerson's Self-Reliance, which I think is the only book you ever really need to read because it's just like, trust yourself. Boom. There you go. Like, let me drop an emerald tablet on you real quick,
Right.
Listen to your heart, pal. Okay. But yeah, that book also I did, and I'm open to do more, but it's tedious, dude. It's like,
yeah,
it's a lot, especially the editing process of it. And I do, I guess, enough podcasts now to where, I'm doing basically other audiobooks, but sitting there in a room by yourself, just reading out loud it's pretty dry.
Yeah, I was doing that earlier this week, and I was it's just kind of like, man, I was really appreciating people who do full books, because I was just reading like my 2 or 3 page rant things, and I was like, man, doing chapters of this, good Lord. But luckily I have a lot of experience with editing, so that part's not too bad. As long I've just gotten into the habit finally of being like, okay, this is going to take me 6 takes. I'm just going to keep doing it. One of these days, I thought it would be funny to do an episode of nothing but the ums.
I do think that's really funny.
I think it may come down to that one of these days, just for kicks, maybe like an April 1st episode or something.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, one thing I will say too is like the more you do it, the less takes it'll take you. You'll just get more and more fluid with it, just like anything else. It's like, I didn't mean to get good at it, but if you do it enough, then you get good at it, like, so that's a good thing. That's why I said, like, if I do another one, it won't be intimidating at all, because
just crank it out.
I've done a couple, and then I've done one that was 800 pages. That's like, oh my God, that's like that's like a relationship, that was a lot of work for sure. But yeah, I wish I could still share that. I don't have it anymore, and that's been copyright flagged or whatever. So I think people have it, but you just got to ask around,
Yeah.
But yeah, people have asked me for it, and unfortunately I can't share it because I don't have it. And, I don't want to go to court. So,
I mean, that's fair.
Yeah. But,
no, I'm just glad it was available when it was. I listened to individual parts of it a lot, because it takes me like several times for that kind of stuff to sink in. So, I mean, between working and like putting it on to go to sleep and stuff like that, it was a much easier way for me to try to read it. I'm a book hoarder, but if I wouldn't have bought that book, because I'd be like, I'll never read that. I know.
It.
I'm finally in my early 40s. I'm like, I'm not really going to read this book. Why am I? Come on, what's going on? I have pared it down to the stuff that I actually mean to read before death. I cannot bring anything else in.
That's true. We do eventually run out of time. You got to be selective. You do. You can't just read everything anymore, right? So Anne of Green Gables, I'm sorry. Okay. I got to read, I don't know, like some other book. I'm a book hoarder for sure. And I'm still reading a lot, as well, but I won't really do much else until I kind of formulate my own, because that book is so thick, and I really just wanted to boil it down to its most simplistic, I guess, and that's not really, I don't know, it's tough, but I want to try to come with some stuff that's just, really straightforward, easy to understand, in time.
Yeah,
in
I think we really gotta. We've had thousands of years of people thinking that esoteric concepts are reserved for a certain class of people, and that did not help the development of the human race. So let's maybe make that easy to get to. Like,
Yeah.
rather than, there's already so many barriers.
Paywalls, and it's like at the bottom of every rabbit hole is a place to fill out your PayPal, like,
right.
It's like, man, dude, enough. Like, yeah, I'm with you there. Let's make things accessible. It's, people need to be able to understand how to take control of their life. That's your human right.
It's like, I understand where secret societies came from. It's like when the Catholic Church is actively hunting people that disagree with it, you got to keep a low profile, but, you got to do things like hiding concepts visually in architecture and hiding your holy books in jars and caves and things like that. And getting like real thick with the metaphors, which will inevitably be completely misunderstood by people on the internet. And, but now we're in a time where it's kind of time to come out of not the closet.
Well, it might be,
I'm gonna steal one from Ryan Singer. Do you know Ryan Singer?
That name sounds familiar, but I don't know him offhand.
He's got a great show called Me and Paranormal You, where he's just like very on the nose about his experiences and talking to people about, weird stuff, which cool. I really appreciate. But he calls it coming out of the attic.
Okay. I like that.
I like
That's
that
awesome.
too.
Yeah.
But rather than just steal it, I wanted to give him full credit because he deserves it.
It's good not to steal people's jokes, we appreciate that. We
it's
comics
dirty.
like it when you do that, when you don't steal our jokes, See people get beat
I guess you could say coming out of the pyramid, but that seems a little too silly too.
That's cool. I like that though. I like the visual there,
Coming out of the pyramid.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah, I think I agree. Yeah, occulting information from people, that's not cool. People should have access to all the same information. One thing that's amazing to me too, though, that in my naivete just didn't ever really connect is that there are people out there who are, quote unquote awake or whatever, and they just have really bad intentions.
Yeah.
I never really thought about that. I just thought, oh, well, everybody who's doing this has the same motivation that I do, right? And as it turns out, nope, not necessarily the case.
No, listen, I'm a recovering conspiracy theorist. I've moved on to coincidence theory, but I'm just teasing. No, I don't know. I don't know what to call myself. I think I came up with conspiracy enthusiast because I'm back to it being like I keep a healthy distance because you do stumble upon things that where you're like, oh, this hits you in the gut and you realize, oh, this is a thing. This is like this scary thing that I was afraid that exists does. And, it's going to be a long time before it's common knowledge, but I'm just kind of like putting it in the back of my mind and going, okay, this is a thing to watch out for, but I'm not going to focus on it because that feeds it attention.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of these things are useful context, but we got to get past this idea that everybody who's into something a little bit abnormal is automatically in a cannibal death cult. Like that's taking it a little bit far.
Disqualified. You're a conspiracy theorist, you're disqualified. You're crazy, you're disqualified. You're schizophrenic, disqualified. That's the idea, right? It's that like, and it doesn't matter, like either side or perspective could just shove you in a box and then there you are, labeled, bam, and then what do you say to that, right? Like, so that's the kind of weird thing about it. And when we get into this, it's like the Epstein thing, right? It's like how could you not know that there's something fishy going on there, right? And I'll leave it at that. I don't have to like hypothesize or theorize, but something is weird there. That's not. Yeah. And then there's no explanation. And then a week later, people stopped talking about it or whatever.
Yeah, it was incredible. It was like not even 24 hours before it was replaced with something else to be really upset about. But for a hot second, like people that you never expected to say it were like, oh, he didn't kill himself. There's no way. It's too fishy. It was sloppy. It was very sloppy. Like these guys, the way these guys usually seem to operate is to be real cute and throw up a bunch of like number patterns and symbols and stuff. But this time they're just like, hey.
No, we got to get this guy. He's going to take us all down.
They're like, we don't have time to set up like the lunar calendar and the whatever.
An altar and all this stuff.
Yeah. I can't get a goat today. Like it's, Black Lodge problems,
Right, exactly. Hashtag that, but
I mean, I make light of it because I have to, but I think there are people. I mean, the way it's normally discussed is that the whole world is run by 23 people who worship X, fill in your preferred villain, and everything that happens is calculated. It's not. I don't think it's that simple. I think that's a lot of things going on. I think there are a lot of competing forces of various kinds. I do think that there are indeed sinister forces and sinister groups, but I don't think we should give them credit for running the whole world. I think we just have to realize that they're an influence. And if you learn enough to know how to see their tracks and kind of like keep that and like, okay, noted, but living in fear of these people doesn't help your life. And, trying to get to the like, what is the most horrible thing I can prove doesn't especially help either.
Well, especially if you're emotionally affected by that. That's the important part.
Yeah.
And so I had been very much so when I first got into all the conspiracy stuff, like very emotionally affected by it. But you have to be able to get to a point, and it may take time. There's that whole dark night of the soul shit, whatever. The people, I've definitely been through that, I think, but I'm going to make fun of it still. Because I think that you have to be able to laugh at anything or else it has power over you. I think laughter is really important. And if we can, and it sounds almost unsympathetic in a way to laugh at something, but it takes the power away from it. And it's like, oh, well, that's laughable. It's comical at that point.
Right.
And that's not unempathetic. That's empathetic. It's just that you see the irony of it. And then that way there's less power. So like the idea of, like you said, like hooking into it and saying that, there's these people who control everything. I don't think it's that. I think there's a lot of unintended consequences too that happen as well. And then probably, like you said, a bunch of other factions and stuff. I think the important thing is, as much as we can, do the best you can, of course, play our own game. The more we play our own game,
Amen.
And it's like I opened up Instagram the other day, and it's like there's this little thing at the bottom now. It says like buy Facebook, or whatever. Ugh. It's like from Facebook, I think, at the very bottom when you open Instagram. Same thing on WhatsApp now. It's like, all right, it's time to play a new game, right?
Yeah,
these guys are catching up and they're buying us out. We got to go do something.
They
else.
Are, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of. I want to address the stuff that you just talked about, but there is also. You get the feeling that it's sort of a viral situation. It's like, oh, that's where. Let me take over your white blood cells and just produce things that seem like what you want, but I'm still watching everything. When did everything become a data funnel? Was it always intended that way? Do we just kind of it's just interesting. I remember being at the beginning of the internet and like, you were really careful who you even told people your name. And now it's like, here's my GPS coordinates, here's my address, here's my PayPal account, it's funny how quick we made that switch. I mean, 20 years isn't that quick, I get, but you know what I mean? It's interesting. It
is in the same breath too. And I don't mean to play devil's advocate. I just saw Whitney Cummings do some stand-up when I was in LA the last time. And she starts talking about how before the internet, we would just put all our information into a book.
Right.
Our address, our phone number, everything, and then just throw it on people's doorsteps. And she said, and you know what happened to those things? People threw them out, and like they would wind up somewhere, and a bum would rip the pages out and wipe his ass with it. That's what's happening to your information.
I got a phone book like 2 days ago in the mail, and it filled the entire mailbox. And I'm like, why is this happening? Nobody is looking at these at all. It's so strange. Like, who are the poor people still paying money to have their information in this book that nobody looks at? Like, people angrily throw these away as soon as they arrive.
How is this business still in operation? Like, how do they make any money? People still advertise, I guess, in there.
I guess so. I mean, good for you if you're running the phone book and you're still making money somehow. I guess
I read the phone book for the ads. Thank you very much. There's no other reason to read it. Like they don't even have email addresses or anything in there.
It's 85% of the pages are yellow. There are white pages for people who like are still comfortable with all that, I guess. But
And have
I mean,
a home phone. Nobody even has a home phone anymore.
I mean, that stuff exists, and I don't entirely. I sort of miss a landline sometimes.
I do too, to be honest.
Because it was okay.
Probably less radiation too on the landline.
We're about to have a very middle-aged conversation, so let's not stay here too long. But it was interesting and a special experience to be like, I have to wait by the phone. I have to like be home when someone's going to call, and it has to be like near a comfortable chair. And like, I'm going to sit here and we're going to have this conversation. And it did sound better. So you felt like you were there a little more. And that's just kind of gone. Even like really high quality, like we're having a conversation right now. We're getting a bit of that. So I think podcasts kind of maybe replaced the landline in a way, because you kind of have to sit down so you can be in front of your microphone and stuff. It's more intimate, I think. I think we lost a lot with everybody just having their phones all the time, and you can
just text.
As soon as people could call you anywhere, nobody took a call anymore. It's kind of funny.
Well, it's terribly inconvenient. I'm in the middle of something, like it's
right. Yeah.
That's part of it.
It's a strange situation. Like you've got a computer in your pocket and people can reach you in like 15 different ways, but you got to be into it. And most of us aren't, because the same device offers 95 alternatives to having a conversation at any point.
That's so true. Yeah. Did you hit me up on Telegram? No. No, you got to send me a Snapchat. It's incredibly exhausting to keep up with all the ways and means. Like, I don't even know how to do Snapchat. I have no idea. I just completely leave that. And I'll get them from people, and I'm like, I'm not even gonna open the app, dude. I'm afraid I'm gonna send something weird on accident, because I don't even understand how the interface.
The turnover is so quick now, but it's like as the apps die and the new apps occur to the teenagers or whatever, like by the time we're hearing about it, it's already mostly gone.
It's pretty passe.
Yeah. It's like
TikTok, right? Like TikTok is probably, I think somebody told me the other day, they're already in trouble for something. It was like they were trying to anti-bully, but then they flagged, people's accounts that were like overweight and, maybe unattractive physically or something. And so that they got in trouble for trying to prevent the thing that they actually are. That's funny.
It's it's almost like allowing technology to advance without morality had some side effects that we didn't expect. It's almost like human nature hasn't changed, but technology has just amplified it.
Yes, absolutely. Human nature has not changed. That's the thing. I mean, and that's why the data, grab, because it's like, oh, well, we've never understood more about human psyche more than now. We can track everything that you do. So like now we really understand human nature even better. And I think we had a great understanding of human nature for a long time. If you read the book Propaganda by Edward Bernays, you're like, holy shit.
Oh yeah.
Like that's a prime example, the first paragraph. And then, talking about just shoveling off and basically selling people crap because people needed to get rid of it, and then that's how we became this sort of society that we live in today, where we need all this extra stuff. We just buy more material things. Speaking of which, I'm probably going to go out and buy a bunch of things right after this call. But
yeah, it's the ritual must be perpetuated.
That's right.
I mean, look, we all do it. It's in the end of the day, you can have fun with it. It's a representation of your love, as long as you're also delivering the real thing and not just the symbols. I think it's fine. It's fun. I mean, my wife and I just did a thing where we were like, listen, we don't have a lot of bread this year, so this is our budget, and you can go as crazy you want with this very reasonable amount of money. And the game is, what's the most creative way we can spend this? And so for me, I'm like, how many things can I get for this amount of money? So I'm just like plowing through town, trying to find thrift stores I never discovered before. So it's like a game, and it's fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, make it fun, make it a game. You know, it's the same. It's the same with me. Most of the time, one of the traditions that I have is I take my mom to dinner on Christmas Eve. Because when we were kids, we got all excited on Christmas Eve. Because it's like, you know, Christmas Eve's tomorrow, and that's the day before Christmas. All about that anticipation. My grandfather was right. He used to tell me before we went fishing, he'd be like, the anticipation's the best part.
And it is. It's the best. Like just staring at the boxes, trying to figure out what it is. As long as you like keep that sense of wonder. I feel like the big danger in our culture is so many people are like, these are the things I'm going to get, and if I don't get them, I'm going to be really upset with you for until next year. And you know, it's just like I really wish we could. I think what I hope for when I give somebody a gift is just like, I spent some time thinking about this. Maybe it's not exactly what you had in mind, but this is what it means to me. I'm sharing that with you. It's, you know, it's a way to try to get around language because it's so hard to express our feelings. So
I think gift giving is beautiful. That aspect of it is fantastic. I wouldn't hate on that. You know, the just buying excessive junk stuff. That's just something I think that too is just, it is part of our culture because of that. You know what happened in the 30s. You know, and with just making a bunch of extra crap, you know,
yeah,
industrial revolution, having a bunch of extra crap. And then we became this emotionally, manipulated, not manipulated, but this just emotionally sort of invested, sort of society where it's like, if you look at a society like Russia, for instance, very logical. It'd be like, here's why you need this thing. This is why. You know, but as Aristotle said, he's like, the most important thing in debate is not the facts. It's actually how much you identify with the person who's talking to you. You know, I can't remember
I
the
like
term
that.
for it. But but establishing that. So we are a little bit more emotional, I think, as a result of that. But gift giving is an awesome thing. I think it's great. And so I embrace that. And it's always nice to see family and stuff. I know a lot of people like complain about their family, but I'm pretty lucky. You know, I've had some bouts
Sure.
and some nasty shit happen. But so far, you know, I've managed to like be able to, you know, like I was talking about earlier, man, let's find that place in yourself that's just love and go there. Like start there. I'm trying to like project even that emotion toward people who have wronged me and truly heal, you know what I mean? And really open that up, you know, and I'm not trying to give pointers necessarily on that or get too far into it, or I'm certainly not trying to talk anybody out of dealing with their stuff or feeling their emotions or anything like that. But I think when we get to a resolve within ourselves, like I think probably first we have to let go of what's happened to us by other people, and then kind of go in and clean house. You know, I think we can get to that point, then we can be really effective and helpful, and then it'll be, I think, pretty obvious where to go next, what to do next. The path will kind of light the way for itself. You know.
I'm really I'm happy to see so much talk in culture about addressing trauma and dealing with it, because I think we're just now getting over World War II in a lot of ways. Because like, you know, your grandparents, my grandparents, they couldn't talk about it. They literally couldn't talk about it. There was nowhere to go. There was nobody to talk to, and everybody just had to be, you know, stoic after witnessing like the greatest atrocity that had occurred in recent times. And can you imagine that? I mean, I cannot imagine like busting. I can't imagine it all. I can't imagine like seeing that reality and then coming home and trying to live a regular life like it didn't happen. You know, so I have a lot of compassion for people from that generation, and when I can talk to them, I like to. My grandfather was in the Navy. Like one of my grandfathers I never met, but the other one, he had he had a night watchman job, and one night he just had a PTSD flashback, and I think maybe a mild stroke. He just relived the whole thing on you know, he just like fell down and it all happened to him again, and then he didn't really talk that much after that. So I met that version of him that was kind of like broken down but still mellow, sweet version. He was just a different man, after going through all of that.
Yeah.
That's rough. I mean, and now today we've got 22 veterans killing themselves every day, and that's an average. I mean, who knows how bad it really is from place to place, but like it's so tragic to me that we send these people into the grinder often for no reason, and then when they come back we just pretend that nothing happened to them. It's tragic to me, and I hope that at some point in my career I'll be able to facilitate some recovery for those people. I would really like to see that happen, that start to develop. It seems like there are some things are starting to happen on the fringes of the therapeutic world they're eventually going to get mainstream because they're practical, and that eventually is what determines what the government pays for.
Yep, that'd be good to see. It'd be good to see some more options, I think, for vets. I think that's great. That's a really really good cause too, because I think a lot of those folks are being deployed really for, like you said, no good reason. So it's sad for that, but at the same time, they should definitely be able to come back and get the help that they need. Everyone who's experienced trauma should have the ability to get help.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, we just wouldn't be a war economy, but while we are, right, we need to take care of the back end.
Yeah.
These absolutely. People have families and lives, and they're not just, a meat machine to pull triggers and take shrapnel. Like it's just disgusting the way that we treat these people. And I'm not a veteran. I don't have the direct experience, but I've known enough of them to be really upset about it. I'll just put it that way.
That's fair. Yeah, I have a lot of friends who are veterans. I have nothing but gratitude and a lot of appreciation for everybody who's gone through that. And we all saw G.I. Joe when I was a kid. I thought I would do it, and I'm glad I didn't. I can't imagine working through some of that stuff, or even if it's really, you might just not be the same person after some of that stuff. It's rough. So I do appreciate everybody who's done that. And yeah, that's definitely something that we need to make sure of. I agree. That's a really good way to put it. Until we're not a war economy anymore, we should definitely take care of the people who are serving those interests. It's really, really important. But well, that's a cheery note to end on.
Well, we don't need to end on that. I mean, I think at the end of the day, like, the reason I started asking hard questions and like making pastors uncomfortable, and eventually became like a conspiracy researcher, and eventually, investigated all this like esoteric occulted knowledge, is because I just want to know how to help. Really, at the end of the day, I want to know what's going on. I want to know how to optimize myself and help other people do the same, because I think we can do so much better. And I like what you said before about looking at life like a game. That's something I try to do too. You got to walk a fine line. You can't be flip about it. But if you engage with life as something that you acknowledge parameters, there are parts of it that are in and out of your control. But I think you also have to accept, I set this difficulty level to harder than I needed to. And these are some different ways I could try this same. I don't know. Listen, I don't play a lot of video games because I just can't, sensory wise, I can't keep up with it. I was a Nintendo guy. That's about as deep as I ever got, or like Quake or something like that. But in modern stuff is just too many things happening for me to keep up with it. But I think the metaphor holds. I really like what Jessa Reed said about like the multiplayer game versus the first person shooter. Like, you have the point of view, that's one part of your life is your point of view perspective, and then the other part of this is like the bird eye view, where you can see all the context. And if you can teach yourself to go back and forth between those two things, you're better at playing both sides of it. I think we get used to doing the same things as our character, so to speak. And what I always think of is Wolfenstein 3D. Was it Wolfenstein 3D?
I remember that. I remember that game.
So I used to love that game because, it's shooting Nazis. What's not to love? But I remember I used to try to save the game before I would get shot. But if you were too slow, you would save the game as you were getting shot. So then you would load it and you would immediately get shot again. And I think that you can do that to yourself in your life. And you just got to like stop saving the game right before you screw yourself up. You know, you got to repeat. It seems like you get the opportunity to repeat things until you figure out a better way to do it. And then you move on, and then your possibilities open up a little bit. I'm not going to pretend to or understand the mechanisms behind that, but it does seem like it's not so much time is a flat circle. It's more like a spiral. And if you make the small moves, you can gradually widen your experience and, you know, go through some kind of an ascension where you've got a better point of view and you have a more informed way of living your life. But as we were talking about before, you have to take care of yourself first. I think I think the more advanced stages of the game are really knowing yourself, really understanding the gifts that you have, and knowing how to employ those gifts to help other people and facilitate their own growth. I think that's really what we're here for at the end of the day. I think we're here to help each other. It's really hard to remember that because we grow up in a culture that encourages selfish behavior and almost nihilistic consumerism. But that's not the only way you can live your life. So I think it's important. You don't have to go to all the way to wondering if the earth is flat or if the universe is run by a computer program or whatever, but there are healthy questions to ask about the way we operate in this world and the choices that we have.
Yeah, that sums it up really, really well. You know, I'll just add on to that, like, no matter how insignificant you think what you have to offer is, you know, it's incredibly valuable to many people, you know, like, it's like, we all serve humanity in different ways. I guess I should say that. So don't sell yourself short. I'll just put it that way. But man, that's really beautifully said, Jonathan. I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah. Like, finding out exactly who we are, what our skills and gifts are, how to develop those, and then how to implement them to help serve other people. That's,
and I think if you're worried about, you know, evil running the world, just don't help. You know, the ultimate conspiracy is the one against yourself. Like, stop preventing yourself from being who you are because some stray thought or some programming from the culture or from your family or whatever tells you that you don't deserve to be yourself. It's not true. Test it, find out, you know, take the chance of being brave enough to do what your gut says to do and see what happens. You may fall down. You probably will. It's part of learning. I mean, we literally don't learn to walk without falling down. So just remember that. And don't worry about being perfect. The models that we have in society, like the celebrity, like the new gods, the celebrities, you know, like, those people have a staff of thousands and millions, if not billions of dollars go into producing those perfect images. You don't have to do that. It's not even possible. What's more important is to figure out who you are and be brave enough to do that and offer yourself to people without worrying too much about what happens. Detachment is key. It's really hard. And it's another one of those words where that one thing where I like transurfing is because they use the term importance instead of attachment, detachment, because that's a complicated term. Yeah, just take a chance. Don't worry about what happens. The simplest thing, this is something I started doing years ago working in the hospital, because you're in a hospital. Nobody wants to be in a hospital. That nobody's like jazzed about being at the hospital. Okay. It's not like, thank God I'm going to the hospital today. You know?
Well, when I've been sick, to be honest, like, one time I fasted for 7 days and then I ate pizza, and
that will do it.
I went to the hospital and I was so glad after I went to the hospital.
No. I'm not saying no one's grateful for care in the hospital. I'm just saying, like,
I know what you mean. I'm
the people you're likely to run into in the hall. Like, my job is such that, like, most of the phone calls I get are people who are mad because something isn't where they thought it would be. So I got to go solve that problem so they can do their work. Ultimately, like, what I'm doing is facilitating them taking care of somebody else. So I try to keep that in mind. The other thing I keep in mind is that most of the people in the hospital are running 12-hour shifts. So everybody's like hungry and tired and exhausted and probably got yelled at by somebody up higher up the food chain just before they called me. So what I try to do, and I don't do this every day, especially when I don't take care of myself, but what I try to do is just look people in the eye, give them a genuine smile, and you don't have to do more than that. And some people just open like flowers when you do that. And that's all they really need. They just need to be seen. I think most of us just need to be seen and heard. And we need to feel human. This is such a depersonalizing time, you know? We really got to get back to seeing each other. This, I don't know. It's a really weird time. I just did a little rant about isolation on my show, and you can be surrounded by people and feel completely alone because we've just sort of forgotten how to hang out. So I think it's really important to just practice just offer your smile.
Yeah.
And because you're going to get two responses. Either people are going to smile back or you're going to get dead eyes. And you know what? Who cares? It's not your job.
That's right.
To provoke a reaction.
Well, I want to say, first of all, thank you for what you do. Like I have so much respect and admiration for anybody who works in a hospital. I mean, I really do. That's tough. That's not something that I don't think I could do that. I have such a weak stomach. but I really, like my best friend Isaac, he's a nurse. He's awesome at St. Mary's, and I hang out with him and his kids all the time. And he tells me stories, so I know a little bit about it, from somebody else's experience. But yeah, the connection thing, it's everything. We've got to connect, or like the Bible would say, commune. That it is everything. You when you open somebody up or smile at somebody first or say hello first, like you are at the cause of that interaction, which is where you want to be, right? You don't want to be the effect. But I've noticed in my experience, because I try to do very much the same thing, even if I'm just out and about, I try to bring people joy when and just open up to them and just be nice. 9 times out of 10, you do not get the dead eyes. 9 times out of 10, you get a big smile, and because we all want to be acknowledged, like you said, we all want to be seen and appreciated and heard and all of that. So if you extend that first, then you're going to get it back. I mean, there's the occasional person who's just mad at the world,
right.
But it has nothing to do with you. If you say hello to
and
somebody,
that's why this is a good practice, I feel, because you either get the immediate positive feedback and you get to enjoy that you brighten somebody's day, or you get the chance to be reminded that you don't have to be affected by somebody's bad attitude.
Right.
Because it's an incredibly high stress environment. It's a hospital. It's literally for emergencies.
It's life and death for sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And you see a lot of wild stuff in there. I mean, like, I'm not in the trenches with the techs and the surgeons, but I mean, you see those things when you're delivering stuff. You see people that are like on the verge all the time. One of the interesting things about working at this hospital, it's a trauma hospital. So you see people come in from the brink of death and leave. You see people who didn't make it, who become organ donors. You see people born. You see people go out on gurneys in a red velvet bag. I mean, you see it all in one day. It's an interesting place to work if you're going through like a spiritual development thing, because you got a lot of metaphors to work with. But yeah, I took this job out of necessity. I was able to parlay previous experience into this. I think I subconsciously was trying to get into healthcare, but in a way that didn't involve having to go to school. And then, things lined up, and I got hints from human beings and signs from somewhere else, and I dived in to take a more direct approach. And I think that the things that I talk about are just my point of view kind of led me into the desire to be involved in some kind of a therapeutic capacity. Even I'm going into what's called occupational therapy. It has a 200-year-old name, so it doesn't make any sense, but it has nothing to do with jobs. Occupation is just meaningful use of time by human beings. And when people have a debilitating condition or an accident or something like that happens and they lose function, they need help to remember how to do things. And sometimes they have to learn a completely new way. And that's what I wanted to do. And that's what I'm going to do. And one of the concepts from occupational therapy is that people are whole. You have to treat them in a holistic way. You don't just treat the disease, you treat the entire person. And obviously that resonates with me. And what we were just talking about with the smiling is therapeutic use of self, which is essential. You have to have that rapport for people to open up enough to let them be helped. And you have to establish connections with people's families and their caretakers. And there's just, it's challenging for me because I've always been so shy, but I welcome it. You know, I'm trying to do a lot of things that challenge that shyness. I'm obviously talking to strangers on microphones. I mean, not speaking to you. I don't, at this stage, I wouldn't say we're strangers, but I mean, I'm putting out all this information, hoping somebody will see it someday. And I'm hanging my name on it as of like this episode. So it's, I'm trying to like force myself to use those gifts like I was talking about. And I'm only ever happy when I'm helping somebody, you know, truly satisfied. So it made sense to do it for money eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a win-win-win at that point, right? Like, because you're reaping the energetic benefit, which is the money that we use to sort of, you know, as a symbol for value, to do the thing that makes you feel complete and helps another person as well, you know, on their path. So it really is a win-win-win. And that's, you know, I'm trying to incorporate and facilitate as well as much as possible. It's like, how can we all help each other? How can we make the world a more positive place, and a more welcoming, warm, humane place? You know, I think that's awesome.
Going back to the game thing. One of the things I'm trying to write about in this book, and I'm trying to come up with good metaphors because I don't play games right now. So I'm kind of like drawing on older platforms, you know, but I have a chapter I'm working on called cheat codes. And one of the cheat codes that I would recommend to anybody is, listen, if you're depressed, get whatever energy you can and do something good for somebody else. Just do it. And you can do it for the selfish reason that it will relieve you, because it will take you out. If even for like 20 minutes, it'll get you out and like change your experience and remind you that you have other options. Cause I don't know about you, but when I get depressed, it becomes like a tunnel and it feels like the only experience available until it passes. So having these things in your toolkit is really essential so you can get out of the tunnel a little bit quicker.
Yeah, that's good. I haven't really struggled with depression in a while. I've had like a few times where I've been like, you know, down, but I definitely understand that, that sort of like tunnel, the cave even. I totally understand that analogy. And, you know, I've gotten better at dealing with that. It's taken me quite a lot of time and a lot of, attention and all of that. But yeah, like go and doing something for somebody else. I mean, that's amazing. You can do it for the selfish reason that it is going to make you feel better. Absolutely. And that's okay.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
I find that a lot of things that I offer up as advice I'm a contrarian person. I've always been like, well, what do you mean? Why can't you do this? You know, I used to get kicked out of my pastor's office because I would ask him questions he didn't have the answer to. And he'd be like, oh, come on, you're not supposed to ask that. You're just supposed to sit in the pew and sit down when it's time to sit down and stand up when it's time to stand up and put $20 in the plate when it's time to do that. And sing along with the songs from 1600s. And you're not supposed to come back here and hassle me, you know? And so that's just who I am now. I've always been that person. I'm a curious person. Can't let it go. Don't want to let it go. That's who I am. So, but part of being curious is like, well, what if I do the opposite? And I found that a lot of times it really works. I mean, we could talk about like counteracting pendulum type stuff, but one of the reasons I decided to call my podcast Paradoxical Movements is because I think a lot of times the solutions they're not intuitive. Like when you're depressed and nothing tastes like anything and everything is gray and even the sound is dull, like the last thing you're inspired to do is go out of your way to help somebody because you feel like you have no energy and you're like, well, why isn't anybody helping me? So do the opposite. Instead of feeling bad for yourself because it actually just makes it worse, just forget yourself for 20 minutes and take care of somebody, and then you'll feel better. And it can happen so fast, and it can be as simple as just offering somebody a kind word. It doesn't have to be like a big production. I think some people get a little bit too into their charity and make sure people are looking, but that's not what it's about. It's about just putting yourself aside. And then when you put yourself aside for that second, you realize, oh, there's more available to me. Like I'm not, one of the things depression does, in at least my experience, I think some other people might be able to relate to this too. If you're anxious or depressed, like it in sort of like a virus parasitic way, it tries to become your entire experience and convince you that nothing else is available. So then you're in the service of it instead of, the greater purpose of your life. So that's how it feeds. It just convinces you that you have to perpetuate it. And, there's stuff in the Gnostic Gospels and other places about like literal parasites that live off of these energies, but it doesn't have to be true for you to look at it that way and go, you know what? I'm going to starve that tapeworm. You know what? You go to hell, vampire. I'm going to do something nice right now and you can't stop me. And as soon as I've done it, it's had a ripple in the world. And so I'm taking away the emotional food, not only from me, but also from this person. And that feels pretty punk rock. It feels pretty good.
Yeah, punk rock. I love that. Yeah, and I think connection really is part of that too. It really is. It's understanding someone else's situation, facing them. Because for me, when I have been depressed, I don't want to interact with anybody. Like I just get like into that tunnel, and it's like it's a very perpetuating thing that just starts eating and eating and eating and eating and negativity. So yeah, getting out there and helping other people, absolutely. Even just engaging with people, I think will help, whether you're an introvert or not. I mean, and I think most of us are somewhere within the spectrum, not exactly this or not exactly that. Like I recharge by myself, but I like to be around people. I'm an introvert technically on paper, right? Like an INFP or whatever. But like I like to also engage with people. Like I think it's a human need. It is. It's one of Maslow's needs, right?
Right. Yeah, it is. That's one of the things we studied in class was the Maslow's pyramid. Like, and if you're not familiar with that, go look it up. It's pretty straightforward. Some people say it's a little bit too simplified and there's different versions of it and stuff. But really at the end of the day, it's like, if you're not taking care of your survival needs, which you could also map onto your lower chakras if you're into that, you're never going to get to the top of the pyramid, which is self-actualization. And if you don't do that, then you can't be yourself and do your work and give your gifts to the world. So as long as you're hungry and tired and pissed off and lonely, none of the good stuff's going to happen. So you really have to focus on pushing those things to get satisfied. And it's, that a lot of this society that we're in keeps us in the bottom rung, so constantly trying to do all these things. If you can be satisfied, if you can determine what satisfies yourself, you're going to get a lot closer to the top a lot faster.
I think so too. And I think a big key to that, and this is going to sound simplistic too, but it's again, just really exploring your heart, man, the center part of you, that chakra, if you will, and then just finding what fulfills that, because that's going to motivate you. You're not going to burn out. If you go and look at a bunch of videos of the Twin Towers falling over and over again, that will burn you out. Maybe some people that warms their heart. I don't know. It's a little strange.
Little message to all my fellow conspiracy theorists out there. If trauma-based mind control is a thing, and it seems to be, maybe don't do it to yourself.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's great.
There's a lot of videos on the internet. They're not all of things that make you want to kill yourself.
Right. Absolutely. Shift that attention into something more positive, like what it is.
I think it's important to study the dark side, but not to live there. I think conspiracy theory enthusiasts, I think the recent uptick in conspiracy enthusiasm is, I think America is trying to see its shadow. I think that's why we have the president we have. I think that's why we're focused on all of this horrible stuff. And it's like popular in a way that it never was. Like there was always usually one or two people in your town that were into this stuff, but now people are like bringing it up at Thanksgiving and stuff. And
that used to always be me getting shunned by everybody else at the table. It's funny. I didn't realize there was much of an uptick in it. I
feel like there is. I've just based on its appearance in pop culture, stuff like that. maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe I'm just paying attention to it, so it seems that way.
I think you probably are right. I've just overlooked it.
But it does seem in a way like we've avoided, on individual level, we all do it, obviously. But I think as a nation, we've also avoided looking at looking in the basement for so long that it's like, okay, now the basement flooded, everything is up here now. What are you going to do about it? So you can go down the rabbit holes and like convince yourself that you figured out the one true truth and the one true villain to fight, and convince yourself that you're on the flip side and make yourself feel like a hero so you don't have to deal with your own personal stuff. Or you could just look at it all as context and then just continue to live your life in an autonomous way and try to be part of the solution. I think it's really easy, whether you're a religious person or whether you're a very political person or whether you are indeed a conspiracy type person. I think it's very easy to get super sucked in trying to know all the details of the problem. And that's good if you mean to solve it. But if you just want to be the guy who knows everything about the problem, that's a dead end. And you're just going to get burned out. And then whatever good you were going to do, I think you miss out on the opportunity because you blew your whole chance talking smack about people you don't know.
Yeah. I think I even went down that for a while, and that's why I'm a little bit. I mean, I love like Sam Tripoli's podcast. I don't listen to it all the time, but every once in a while I do because that guy cracks me up. I think he's so funny, but I try to avoid any of the conspiracy stuff for the most part, just because I'm just emotionally kind of sensitive, and so like I don't really want to hang out there too long. I'm trying to live hopefully more in the solution, in the new game. What's the new game? That's already happened. That's behind us. We've already seen.
Well, right, exactly. Like it cracks me. I'm sorry, I keep talking over you.
No, you're good.
It cracks me up that people are still talking about the New World Order. It's like, dude, it's been the New World Order since like 1965, man. Like this, whatever word, it's kind of like technology. Like, you think the Army didn't have something like an iPhone in the 80s? They had something. You just had to be the guy, So if we're hearing about stuff now, like who knows how far behind we are really, and the internet is accelerating it. But we got to get over this idea that it's like, we got to get over this idea that we're getting one over on the bad guys. Stuff's going to happen. Just try to be part of the solution. Just add to the light. You're not going to quench the darkness by yourself. Just add to the light. That's the solution. That's really the best you can do. I think it's really tempting to paint yourself as some kind of a hero because we grew up with all those movies where it's one guy versus like the crime syndicate or whatever. But I don't know if that's really how you can live your life in a realistic way. I mean, if your conspiracy theory is correct and there really is an organization that runs everything, what are you going to do when you get to the base? What are you going to do? So, but don't be hopeless about it. Find another way to make the world better. Counteract what you believe is going on. Whether you're like a very enthusiastic Southern Baptist and you think that 85% of culture is satanic. What are you going to do as an alternative? What are you doing to make the world more Christ-like? That's kind of where I'm getting to.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's great. Yeah.
It's fun to look into this stuff because it makes you feel like you're discovering something, and it can be kind of a thrill in a dark way. But you got to,
like we talked about at the beginning of the episode with the whole apocalypse thing, you get sort of seduced by that, right? Like you get like it becomes this whole. I mean, I'm glad people are asking questions. I got to say.
Oh yeah, me too. And what I'm seeing, what happened for me is I stopped thinking of apocalypse as the end of the world and started thinking of apocalypse as the unveiling, which is the original meaning. And I think that in a lot of ways things are coming to light. And I think, yeah, let's focus on the aspect of it. Yes, things are being discovered. Historically, a lot of things have been not great, and probably things that have happened that would terrify or make most people really upset. I think that's true. It seems likely. But why not just be happy that it's finally coming up where it can be dealt with? Because that's the next step. I think a lot of people get so hung up on trying to know, but it's like, well, what are you going to do with that information? So you got to be careful. And I think you got to take care of yourself and you got to take care of other people. And that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that, you know. And one day I was just driving down the road and I was thinking, what am I bringing into the world? You know, like emotionally, like as if
Right.
there's like a bank or some shit, right? Like as simplistic and absurd as that is. But it's like, if I'm bringing fear into the world because that's, you know, what I'm paying attention to, what I'm interested in, you know, what I'm perpetuating, then that's not what I want to. Is that what you want to be bringing into the world? You know, or do I want to be bringing in something positive? Even if it's just that smile when you see somebody, like, what's up? How you doing? You know, that acknowledgement of humanity. It makes a big difference. That's like a plus credit, you know, I think. And I think that puts us in a better place. Like the monks that are on top of mountains. I don't know this, but I'm just guessing. I feel like they're bringing, you know, bringing something into the world by being up there, by meditating, by, you know, just generating love maybe. And it seems like they're inactive, but I believe they're doing something, right, to elevate consciousness, or, you know, however you want to say it. I don't really have the words maybe, but I think that every little bit helps, you know? And
Yeah, because at the end of the day, like, everything is interconnected. I mean, people say it's all one, and it's kind of hard to really wrap your head around that, but it's true. Everything in nature is interdependent, interconnected. The deeper people go into physics, the more that's becoming obvious that esoteric truths were onto something. And I think if you just experiment in your own life, you will find that that is the truth. The things that you do have ripples, positive or negative, and, you know, the consequences come. And if you continue to perpetuate unhealthy things will continue to be there. And so if you are coming from a perspective of being terrified of some force, some shadowy force, assume that it lives on that. Don't feed it. You know, it's not making the world better for you to be cowering in fear from some unthinkable horror. If it's true, find a way to counteract it. If it's not true, spend your time on something else. You know, but I think it's really easy to get wrapped up in, I feel like I'm repeating myself at this stage. I feel like it's easy to get wrapped up in the importance of these concepts, and like it becomes your whole world. And that's the danger some people can have. So I think you got to keep a sense of humor about these things, no matter how dark they are. You shouldn't lampoon them because they're horrifying, but you got to keep that way out, because otherwise you just become food for whatever the force is that's perpetuating all that stuff. I do think it does come down to love and fear. I think if you want to personify Christ as love and Satan as fear, you know, why throw your money at Satan by being afraid of everything when you can spend the same amount of energy adding to the love in the world, you know, and insert your metaphor here, you know?
absolutely. Yeah. Whatever you like, whatever resonates with you, hippie, you know? Well, dude, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time, Jonathan. And I'm excited. This was a pretty good chat, I thought. I
had a great time. I appreciate you having me on.
Dude, it's my pleasure. I appreciate it. And I'll be sure to send this. I guess real quick, you should say where people can find your stuff. I'm sorry. I probably should have plugged, and I'll put an intro and stuff on the beginning, but.
Oh yeah, that's fine. I mean, I always forget about it too. I mean, I'm the kind of guy who can know you for a couple of weeks without being like, oh, by the way, I'm Jonathan. Nice to meet you. So
I just get into it. I'm just like, all right, let's go.
Well, that's good. That's good for me. So people can go to apocalypsefatigue.org, and there's a menu at the top, and there's a link to my writing. There's a link to my music. There's a link to the podcast, which is called Paradoxical Movement, and that's available on all the apps. And if you are interested in the chat that we had, I think you would enjoy that show, and I would appreciate people listening and reviewing and subscribing if they'd like to. There's a email link on there. If you like the show and you'd like to be on, I'm open to it. And I'm on various social medias under various names. Those are also linked from apocalypsefatigue.org. And be glad to have your attention. Thank you very much.
Dude, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for the work you're doing. I really appreciate it. And man, I just wish all the best to you, and 2020 vision, man. It's going to be good this year. I'm excited.
I have a good feeling about it too. I think a lot of work has to get done really fast on a collective level, but I think as individuals, we're going to see a lot of development.
And Happy New Year, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. I really appreciate Jonathan being on the show. He's awesome. Check his work out, apocalypsefatigue.org. You can check me out on YouTube and on Patreon /Bootsy Greenwood. Enjoy this track by The Powder Room.
That's the way